Hello Veggie channel watchers, my name is Jules Febre. I'm a Jivamukti teacher who is based in New York City. I spend about 8 or 9 months of the year traveling around the world teaching yoga, Jivamukti yoga, and right now I am in Rome, Italy with the lovely folks from Veggie channel, and it is a pleasure to be here. Jivamukti yoga is a methodology that is geared towards remembering the goal of yoga, which you could call enlightenment, nirvana, satori, Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, but not just for our own sake, but for the sake of others. In Buddhism, they have this word called bodhisattva, and it is the same as a Jivamukti, meaning our effort is geared towards not just our own liberation, but the liberation of those around us, not just human beings, but all the beings that we share this planet with, all our fellow earthlings. And it is through compassion to all beings that we begin to blur the lines of separateness and awaken the innate love and compassion that we have, not just for the beings who are like us, who are similar to us, who share the same cultural identity, but also for those who are very different from us, perhaps walk on 4 legs and have a little bit more fur or hair. Can we express our loving compassion for them as well? I was born and raised in New York City. I wasn't raised vegetarian or vegan at all. In fact, I resisted it for a long, long time. It took me a while to eventually get around to it. In fact, my aunt and uncle, who are also Sharon Gannon and David Life, had been vegetarian since I'd known them my whole life, and they always were encouraging me to take this path, but as many young people, I resisted and I said no, 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 no. However, when I was in high school, about 17, 18, I met somebody else that I really respected. He was a graffiti artist and very funny and very smart and well informed of what was happening in the world. And he was vegan. And I always had this idea in my mind, like the people who were vegan were only my aunt and uncle, these weird hippies who practice yoga and weren't necessarily cool with my generation. And meeting somebody who I could connect with, who was able to communicate to me why in a language that I understood and could still participate in the same activities that we all did, was a blessing. And when I graduated high school, I guess I was 18, as a gift to myself, I became a vegetarian. But I didn't know what to eat. So I wasn't completely vegan yet, and so I ate a lot of eggs and cheese and these kinds of things, and I just felt terrible because I had removed everything else. I could feel immediately when I was eating the eggs or the cheese what was happening in my body. So then I became vegan, and then I really didn't know what to eat. In fact, I only ate potatoes for like a month. Baked potatoes, fried potatoes, potato chips, mashed potatoes, only potatoes. I smelled like a potato, it was terrible. So the next thing that veganism brought to me, I was still probably 18 or maybe 19 by this time, was learning how to cook. Learning how to cook gave me the ability to understand more the diverse, rich, plentiful nature of all of the food around us. There was a great book by Jonathan Safran Foer called Eating Animals. And he has one statistic in there that says most humans only eat 1% of the available food. Our diet is so small in terms of its range. And becoming vegan in New York City allowed me to really explore the range of delicious food that is available. One of the aspects of yoga practice is you want to be able to have an idea of where you're going, meaning the end result. In this case, in my case, My desired end result, my end place, is to be so comfortable within my own being that I have a sense of self-confidence that doesn't arise from other people's opinion of me, whether it's good or bad, and that I am able to feel a connection and a remembrance to my teachers, what they have taught me. You know, sometimes they call it being connected to source, sometimes they call it enlightenment, and it's a big thing to ask for, but that is my desired place to be sitting in joy. Now, how does one get there is the question, and is it possible to live in a world where there's only joy? Absolutely not. This world is filled with suffering. However, it is a practice of ahimsa, or non-harming, to incorporate a vegetarian diet and vegan lifestyle into what I'm doing to find that joy. Because when I am able to be of service to another, when I'm able to know that my food choices, my clothing choices, to the best of my ability, have allowed for someone else to live a more happy and free life, I find myself in a more happy and free place. And my goal for the next 5 years or the next 10 years, or maybe, who knows, maybe I won't even last that long, maybe for the next year, or at least the rest of today, is to try and live a life where I'm practicing to reduce the sum total of suffering, enhance the amount of joy in my life and in the lives of those around me, and do my best to carry on the teachings of my teachers. Oftentimes people think of yoga as a practice that may be separate from their lives, like something you do in a room, something you do on a mat, something you do in front of an altar, something you do when you have time to practice, separate from the real world or your real life or everything else that you do. But yoga itself is a lifestyle, and you could say a culture, a way of being that is replete with artistic expression, a source language, along with many different practices. I didn't grow up in a yogic culture. For the most part, I grew up with yogic influence, but the culture was very much a hip-hop culture, with the same things, with artistic expression through music, through dance, through reflection and contemplation in the form of poetry and community development. My desire later in life, after I realized how potent the yogic influence had been on my life, was to bring the yogic teachings back to hip-hop culture, community, my friends who speak the same language that I do, and even people that I don't know. Hip-hop asana is essentially Jivamukti yoga with a hip-hop influence. It is not my desire to create something new, but put a new spin on something very old, very ancient. What we do, or what I do, for the most part, is I try to bring yoga to people who might not always have access to it. Many places in the world, people think of yoga as a little bit for the elite class, even people who can afford it, people of a certain economic standing. And whether or not you can afford yoga, you might not even feel comfortable wearing the clothes, going to the place, talking about Ganesh or Krishna or any of these things. Does that mean you cannot incorporate the foundational teachings of yoga, or for that matter, any spiritual tradition that you are unfamiliar with? Of course not. But you need some kind of common ground. So common ground for me is hip-hop. And when I first started, I was working with a very amazing philanthropist, humanitarian, hip-hop mogul, and just an all-around beautiful being, Russell Simmons. He founded Def Jam Records, which had the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Run DMC, and many others. And he would come to my class often, and I expressed to him my desire. He connected me with some places that he donated some money and resources to. And I eventually started teaching hip-hop asana in places like Brownsville, Brooklyn, or the Lower East Side of New York, where people weren't exposed to it. And the feedback was fantastic. People loved it, and they wanted more and more and more, and it started to grow. And eventually I started teaching with a DJ, spinning vinyl, because that was the original state of hip-hop music, using rock and roll or jazz or funk. And then even I taught recently at a yoga journal conference where instead of emphasis on pranayama, we had a beatboxer come and teach beatboxing. We have, my brother's a breakdancer, he has come and taught some breakdancing movement instead of the Surya Namaskar. Hip-hop asana in its essential form is trying to build a bridge between two cultures that originally started as subculture. Two cultures that said, we are not okay necessarily with everything that's going on. We don't have access to all of the resources and materials that everybody else has, but we want to connect. We want to connect to each other. We want to connect to musicality, to harmony, to movement. And how do I bring these two seemingly completely separate things together? Which is the goal of really many subcultures, but also of yoga itself. And this, to me, is hip-hop asana. If you're ever interested in coming to see me, have class, have satsang, have a chat, you can find more information about what I'm doing and where I'm doing it at www.julesfebre.com. If you want to find me in Rome or any Jivamukti in Rome, just Google Jivamukti Yoga in Rome, jivamuktiyoga.com, Jivamukti for life.